Hello friends, welcome back. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this glitter beach frame. So I started with a plain white 4x6 frame and I just spray painted like a blue beachy ombre the same way that you would on a tumbler. So I'm starting with my glitter. I'm going to use all Peachy Olive glitters today except for one, but this is Athena and Cleopatra from Peachy Olive mixed together as my sand. And next I'm going to sprinkle in Venetian as my sand, and I'm just really sprinkling pretty lightly. I'm not going too heavy. I really want to create that ombre effect, even though we're not really tilting our frame and doing anything crazy, it's just laying flat. And as you glitter, you want to overlap your colors just a little bit to create that ombre fade. Just sprinkle lightly and you can always go in and add more. Pay extra attention when you're using a chunky glitter. You want to have a really light hand and make sure that you don't get big chunks and clumps of chunky glitter just like piling up, and it will be hard to make it smooth with the epoxy afterwards. So just keep a very light hand with your chunkies and make sure everything is laying flat before you apply your epoxy. You'll see right here that I put a little bit too much of my Turks glitter, so I tried to go in and add more Capri and it just kind of clumped up. So you want to avoid doing that. Like I said, just keep a really light hand and add more little by little instead of dropping it on there like I did. So here it is all glittered. I'm so sorry for this awkward camera angle. I was trying to get the whole frame in the frame and it didn't work, obviously. After about 6 hours, I spray sealed the frame with Rust-Oleum 2x clear gloss spray paint, and I did that twice just to seal the glitters in, and now I'm going to apply my first coat of epoxy. When you apply your epoxy, you want to be really gentle. You don't want to rub your epoxy all over the rough glitter because that will create micro bubbles in your epoxy and ruin the clear, beautiful finish that we all strive for. I'm really focusing a bulk of my epoxy application on the area that we put that Venetian because that's the chunkiest glitter and I didn't really pay enough attention to making it lay flat, so it does need a little bit more epoxy. I'm also working my way from light to dark, so I'm not bringing any of that dark navy blue down into the lighter blues. I really want to go kind of section by section, color by color, seal everything in, and avoid dragging my hands in epoxy up and down to mix those colors in a way that I don't want. I'm going to hit it really quick with my heat gun just to pop any surface bubbles and smooth everything out. So I let that dry for about 24 hours and then I did a second coat of epoxy and let that dry for 24 hours, and now I'm ready to add my waves. I'm going to do a thin coat of epoxy over the whole frame, and then I'm going to add just a little bit more where we're going to put those waves so the alcohol inks have some room to flow and move. I've got about 5 milliliters of epoxy, and I'm going to take some white alcohol ink and squirt maybe 2 or 3 drops in there, mix it up really well, and start to make my waves. Now it's really important that you don't go overboard with your white alcohol ink and your waves. I know it's really easy. We all want to add more and like keep making it perfect, but just do a little bit at a time. Step away for a few minutes. If you think it needs more, come back and add more, but don't add too much in the beginning. I think I probably added too much in these steps, and I wish I would have maybe not done so much. Once my waves are applied, I'm going to take my heat gun and kind of push that alcohol ink out, spread it out, make it look kind of foamy. I'm going to go back in with straight alcohol ink later to add some more cell-like waves. So this is just the first layer of foamy waves. So here's the part where I added too much. I did a few little drops of alcohol ink and it was great. And then I went back in and I added more. And I didn't take the time to step away, take a fresh look later. So just be mindful of when you place those big alcohol ink dots. As you can see, they add a lot of pigment and a lot of depth. but you don't want to overdo it and ruin the effect of the waves. So as you can see, when I take my heat gun and kind of blow that alcohol ink out, it creates a really cool cell-like foamy wave effect. What I didn't like was that it was kind of just random splotches of waves, so I went in and added more alcohol ink. I really was looking for a smooth kind of line of foamy waves, and I added a lot of alcohol ink, like I said, so do whatever you want, but I added a lot. Once I blew it out with my heat gun, though, it ended up looking really pretty, I think. So just do a little bit at a time, use your heat gun on it, see where it needs more, and add as you go. Don't just do a bunch of dots and then try to blow them out. But you can always add more, whatever you like. And don't be afraid to get in there with your heat gun, use it to your advantage, blow those waves however you want them to go. Just make sure that you don't leave the heat on any one spot for too long. But I was in here blowing those waves around, really getting the alcohol ink to move, and the epoxy cured fine. Just like I said, make sure you don't hold the heat in one spot, but really don't be afraid. Just use the heat gun to your advantage. Remember what I said about adding too much? I added more alcohol ink to make more waves going up the frame, which ended up fine. It helped blend everything better. But then I went back in with the epoxy and alcohol ink mix because I thought that we would put some clouds in the sky. And the minute I put them down, I was like, no, why did I do this? So I took my heat gun and I really diffused them and just tried to make them as little as possible. Like, just tried to diffuse them out, just make them look very fanned and very soft because I didn't like how they looked. Once I finally put down the alcohol ink in the heat gun, I let this cure for 24 hours so it was fully dry to the touch. And then I took a sanding block and just sanded around the edges and the corners to make sure that everything was really smooth. And I sprayed it down with 91% rubbing alcohol and made sure it was fully dry. And now I'm going to tape off the front of the frame so we can take care of the back. After the frame was taped off, I took some little epoxy mixing cups and taped them to each corner of the frame so we can stand it up and be able to maneuver a little bit better as we apply the epoxy to the back and finish that off. This just makes it easier to hold and keep steady as you are doing the edges and make sure nothing leaks and any of that. I spray painted the back of the frame with a flat black spray paint, and now I'm going to mix a little bit of glitter into the epoxy that we're going to put on the back of the frame. I decided to go with black just because it will cover up all those messy epoxy leakage marks from when I wasn't so clean. But you could really do any color. You could do white, you could do the same beach on the back, you could even just leave it plain if you wanted to. Totally up to you. I'm mixing a silver and a black glitter together in this little medicine cup, and I'm going to add about 20 milliliters of epoxy to the glitter and stir it up really, really well. I ended up actually adding some more glitter because I wanted it to be a little bit thicker so that it wouldn't run over the edges and ruin the front of the frame that we worked so hard on. I'm applying this epoxy in a super thin layer. We don't want to do anything too thick. We just want to cover the back of the frame so it looks nice and smooth and cohesive. Now, taking that leftover epoxy that's been sitting for a little while, I'm going to add a little bit more glitter to it to thicken it up just a little bit more before we apply it to the sides, because I really want to make sure that we don't get any dripping or runnage, is that a word? Dripping on the sides. I want it to just go on smoothly and cure without leaking over or ruining the edges. Like with the back, we're going to apply a super thin layer to each edge and just go very slowly. Make sure you don't get too much epoxy building up in one spot. We want it to be very thin and smooth. So after the back of the frame is all cured and dried, I took the tape off of the front and applied those same cups to the back so we can do the final coat on the front of the frame and finish this thing off. I actually ended up adding a name and a couple more coats of epoxy because I made this frame for my best friend who just got engaged, so I added a photo of them and this is how it turned out. I'm really happy with the result and I hope you like it too. Thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!